The dark green hat lay adrift in a parched crevice, snagged in a cluster of cacti amid the cracked expanse of the Badlands, as if someone had deliberately placed it there to be found. But the man who once wore that hat, Derek Johnson, a 62-year-old retired police officer, had been missing for 5 long years. That morning, he told his wife he'd be home before sunset, just going out to sightsee and reflect on his future after retirement. But as night fell over the jagged peaks, Derek never returned. His car was discovered abandoned at the Pinnacle's overlooked parking lot. Doors locked, no signs of struggle, but the radio had been ripped out, wires dangling like evidence of an unseen hand. For 5 years, no one knew what happened in those desolate canyons, until a group of hikers stumbled upon the hat, lodged in a spot where no one could have possibly fallen. Did Derek wander off into the labyrinth of razor-sharp rocks on his own, or did someone turn the Badlands into his grave, burying a secret that was never meant to see the light of day? Derek Johnson was born and raised in a small neighborhood on the north side of Rapid City, South Dakota, where people of color like him always had to work twice as hard to earn respect. But Derek proved himself through integrity and dedication, joining the city police force the moment he turned 21. He became not just the pride of his family, but an inspiration for the entire community, a police officer known for his calm demeanor, patience, and unwavering respect for everyone, no matter their background. Neighbors remembered Derek as the kind of man who would spend an evening talking with a troubled neighborhood kid or push an elderly person's wheelchair across the street. Even while in uniform, his colleagues described him as someone willing to protect his fellow officers at all costs, yet never afraid to speak up when he saw something wrong. When Derek announced his retirement after 35 years of service, everyone believed he was about to enjoy a joyful chapter with his wife, children, and the grandchildren he adored. In fact, he had carefully planned his future, a long road trip with his wife through the western national parks, family gatherings, peaceful afternoons fishing by the river. No one could believe Derek would willingly walk away from all of that and just disappear. Derek loved nature, especially the golden sunrises over the rugged peaks of the Badlands, telling friends the place gave him peace after the stresses of police work. But that love turned into a haunting obsession when he never came home. Back at home, his wife, Marcia, always believed her husband would never abandon his family on his own. She remembered every little sign that Derek was planning for the future. He had bought plane tickets to Seattle to visit their son, placed a deposit on a dream trip to Alaska. Every day, she sat at the kitchen table, waiting to hear the door open, waiting for his warm voice to fill the house again, until hope slowly faded with each cold winter that passed. Marcia had married Derek when she was 23. They grew up in the same neighborhood, sharing a dream of a happy family. Marcia worked as a nurse at the local hospital, loved by her colleagues for her gentle, caring nature from the very start of their marriage. They promised to face every hardship together. During the many nights Derek came home late from duty, Marcia always left a warm meal on the table, along with little notes reminding him to take care of himself. Their love grew stronger through every trial, especially when Marcia suffered a serious car accident and spent more than 2 months in the hospital. Derek never left her side, when Derek was honored for successfully rescuing hostages. Marcia's radiant smile lit up the photo of them together in the local newspaper. Within Rapid City's Black community, Derek and Marcia were seen as a model couple, resilient, kind-hearted, always ready to lend a hand. They often organized community events, from handing out treats to kids during the Mid-Autumn Festival to raising donations for struggling families. On the day Derek went missing, hundreds gathered in front of the city police headquarters, holding his photos, pleading with officers to expand the search. Friends from neighboring states drove in to support Marcia, but despite months of searching, with police dogs and helicopters combing the Badlands, everyone who believed Derek was simply lost out there came up empty-handed. That shared determination kept Marcia's hope alive for years, even as an unspoken sense of dread settled over the small home where laughter once echoed from the kitchen. No one knew that, in the weeks before his disappearance, Derek had begun showing small changes that only Marcia noticed. He grew quiet, often staring out the window for hours, eyes fixed on the horizon where the Badlands loomed like a massive stone wall. when Marcia asked. He only shook his head. "I'm just thinking about the future," while tidying up. She found scraps of paper with hurried notes, just a few cryptic words like old files, decision, or someone's watching, when she questioned him. Derek quickly hid them, forcing a reassuring smile. He also started locking the family's filing cabinets, something he had never done before, a few days before he vanished. A friend who met Derek for coffee recalled how Derek kept glancing nervously out the window, as if he thought someone was watching him. He whispered, "I have to do the right thing before it's too late." But he never explained what he meant. Meanwhile, Marcia remembered seeing a strange black SUV circling their block, its headlights shining straight into their living room before speeding off. She felt terrified, but Derek urged her to stay calm, saying it was probably just a mistake. Those scattered clues were brushed aside until the discovery of Derek's hat reignited a terrifying suspicion maybe Derek had uncovered something too dangerous, and someone turned his peaceful walk in the Badlands into a final, permanent disappearance. On March 12, 2018, the sky over Rapid City was draped in a soft gray, with an early spring chill sweeping through the silent streets. Marcia woke up early, brewing a cup of black coffee the way Derek always liked it before his morning walks. Derek ate breakfast slowly, his face thoughtful, but when he caught his wife's worried gaze, he offered a reassuring smile. "I just want to drive out to the Badlands, get some fresh air. I'll be back before sunset," he said, kissing her as he always did before leaving. Marcia watched him through the window, his familiar figure in a khaki jacket, worn jeans, frayed hiking boots, and that dark green cap he never went anywhere without. Marcia always knew the Badlands were Derek's sanctuary, those sweeping orange-red hills, endless cracked plains, cliffs sculpted into alien shapes by eons of wind. It was the place he told her he felt all the chaos melt away, leaving only the sound of the wind and the vastness of the earth and sky. But that morning, when Derek drove off in his silver Ford Explorer, she didn't know it would be the last time she'd see her husband. By noon, Marcia called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She told herself it could be the weak signal among the canyons. But as afternoon gave way to dusk and the sun slipped behind the ridge, her unease grew. Derek was a man of habit, always calling if he was running late, always careful on every trip. As night fell, Marcia struggled to stay calm, but by 9 p.m., saw she couldn't bear it any longer and called the police to report him missing. Deep down, something told her this wasn't just an accident. When the police received the report, they began sweeping the roads leading into the Badlands. By dawn the next morning, a patrol spotted Derek's Ford Explorer parked neatly in the empty lot near Pinnacle's overlook. The car was locked tight, with no signs of forced entry from the outside. Everything looked normal until an officer used the spare key Marcia had brought to open the door inside. Derek's lightweight jacket lay on the seat, his old coffee cup dry in the holder. Everything was unnaturally tidy, but on closer inspection, they discovered the car radio had been torn out, wires dangling, twisted as if someone had been searching for something inside the dashboard. Derek wasn't the kind of man to dismantle his own radio, and there was no sign of robbery. His bag was untouched on the back seat, his wallet and papers still inside. Beyond the tire tracks, there were no other clues around the lot, just cracked, dry earth that left no clear footprints. Checking the weather confirmed it hadn't rained the night before, so nothing had washed evidence away. Yet the terrain leading from the lot snaked into countless deep ravines, just a few hundred meters in. Anyone would vanish completely from view. It was a paradise for those seeking solitude, but also the perfect place for someone to hide a crime that very day. More than 60 rescue workers and volunteers began combing the area around Pinnacle's overlook. Search dogs were brought in. Helicopters circled overhead, blasting calls for Derek. But the Badlands, with its maze of jagged crevices, knife-sharp canyons, and treacherous slopes, swallowed every hope. In the days that followed, news of Derek's disappearance spread throughout Rapid City, the state of South Dakota, and neighboring law enforcement communities. Friends, hiking groups, Even tourists who had met Derek volunteered to join the search. But the Badlands were unforgiving. Each step on the crumbling clay hills and razor-edged rocks carried the risk of disaster. One rescue worker recalled nearly plunging into a deep chasm while investigating a suspicious landslide. Every lead ended at Derek's car. No one had seen him near the parking lot that day, and no park cameras caught a glimpse of him. It was as if he had simply dissolved into thin air among the timeless, wind-sculpted stones, in a silence that chilled the soul. After 2 weeks, police announced a pause on active search efforts, shifting the case to a long-term missing person investigation. Marcia wept until she had no tears left when she heard the news, but she refused to give up. She printed thousands of flyers, posting them all over Rapid City, sending them to shops and gas stations near the Badlands. She called every hospital within a 200-mile radius, hoping someone might find a man with memory loss. The Black community across the state organized prayer gatherings and raised funds for volunteer search teams, but summer turned into fall, then the first winter, then the second. Time slipped by with no phone call. No new clue. Marcia tried to keep life moving, but every meal without Derek's laughter felt like sitting next to a bottomless void. Many nights, she couldn't sleep. Staring out the window toward the Badlands, those red mountains still looming in the moonlight, beautiful and indifferent, just as they were the last day she saw her husband. For most people, the case slowly faded into the past. But for Marcia, it remained an open wound that bled a little more with every day, every month. A question without an answer. Where is Derek, nearly 5 years after Derek disappeared? A group of 3 young hikers from Denver ventured into the Badlands, exploring deep crevices that weren't marked on any tourist map, as one member searched for a way down into a dry chasm. He noticed something caught in a cactus along the cliffside. The sunlight hit it just right, making it gleam an odd shade of green against the rusty red earth. It was an old, dark green baseball cap, with faded initials DJ stitched inside. When they picked it up, they saw frayed brown threads on the underside, worn down by time and the abrasive desert winds. One of them, a law student, immediately remembered the missing person case that had once gripped the Black community of Rapid City. Derek Johnson, the retired officer who'd vanished under mysterious circumstances 5 years earlier. They contacted Badlands Park Rangers at once. When rangers arrived, they confirmed the hat was lodged in a crevice, nearly 10 kilometers, as the crow flies, from where Derek's car had been abandoned, at least 15 kilometers on foot through brutal terrain. The area was riddled with sheer cliffs, where a single misstep could mean death. More disturbing, the hat was firmly stuck in a cactus at the very edge of the crevice, with no sign of having drifted there naturally. The Badlands had seen virtually no heavy rain in the 5 years since Derek disappeared. The immediate question, how could Derek's hat end up here, unless someone placed it or brought him to this remote spot? News of the hat's discovery stunned Marcia. She was called to the police station to identify it. The moment she laid eyes on it, she broke down, sobbing. It was the very hat Derek wore on every trip. She had sewn the frayed brim herself the winter before he vanished. This hat wasn't just an accessory, it was part of him. Seeing the torn threads, she couldn't help imagining Derek's final days, where he went, what he endured, whether he felt afraid or in pain. Investigators showed her the spot where the hat was found, tracing on a topographical map the maze of narrow, jagged ravines surrounded by towering rock walls. Marcia trembled as she realized there was no way Derek would have walked there on his own. This wasn't Derek, the careful man who always checked terrain, weather forecasts, and left his itinerary for her. The more she studied the photos of the site, the clearer the memory became. Derek's car locked tight, the ripped-out radio, all those small oddities once dismissed, now connecting into a terrifying picture. Someone had intervened. The discovery of the hat forced police to reopen the case file, though they remained cautious with the media. They announced there were still no clear signs of foul play, but admitted they needed to reevaluate the circumstances. Meanwhile, Derek's friends and former colleagues began recalling things he had shared in those final weeks. One ex-colleague remembered a lunch where Derek quietly said, "I think I've stumbled onto something I shouldn't have. Maybe someone wants me to stay quiet." His friend thought Derek was just joking about retirement stress. A maintenance worker at Derek's old police department told Marcia he'd seen Derek several times, going through old case files that few even remembered. Marcia began to realize Derek hadn't just been out for a leisurely drive. He had been investigating something bigger, something that frightened him, but that he couldn't let go. All the small details long dismissed, the odd scratches on his car, the mysterious black SUV idling near their house. Derek's deepening silence suddenly fell into place as pieces of a dark puzzle. What investigators couldn't ignore was the car radio that had been ripped out. They tracked down an old mechanic who used to service Derek's car. He confirmed the radio had been nearly new and worked perfectly, with no reason for Derek to remove it. More importantly, dismantling a Ford Explorer radio wasn't simple. It required specialized tools and know-how because of the complex wiring. When investigators took a closer look, they found fingerprints on the dashboard trim that didn't match Derek's. Analysis showed the prints belonged to someone with a different blood type, but they were smudged and too degraded for a clear DNA profile. Additionally, they recovered a long, black hair wedged in a crack beneath the driver's seat, definitely not Derek's. Everything pointed to someone else having been inside Derek's car, someone skilled enough to tamper with electronics, perhaps searching for something or planting something. What once seemed like a trivial detail about the radio now stood out as critical evidence, combined with the impossible location of the hat. It finally forced police to admit Derek's disappearance was no simple accident. When the investigation was reopened, police meticulously reviewed Derek's calls and messages from the days before he disappeared. One unexpected lead emerged the night before he vanished. Derek had a call lasting 18 minutes with an old friend. Ramonda trusted former partner from his early days on the force. Raymond recalled that Derek sounded unusually anxious, asking about a nearly 20-year-old internal corruption case at the police department, case most had long forgotten. Raymond was surprised. Derek had never shown interest in it before. He also remembered Derek frequently pausing during the conversation, as if he were glancing outside or listening for something. Raymond urged him to relax and enjoy retirement, but Derek quietly replied, "I can't turn my back now that I know the truth." Those were the last words Raymond ever heard from his friend. When police investigated, they found in the department's old archives a file on a missing sum from the employee pension fund, tied to a ring of senior officers. The case had been closed for lack of evidence, but one of the names from that group had resurfaced in internal interviews just months before Derek retired, linked to a new allegation of misconduct. Could Derek have uncovered fresh evidence and decided to investigate on his own? Police shared the old corruption file with Marcia together. They examined Derek's notes found in the locked cabinet at home pages of neatly written entries, tracking suspicious expenses, names, addresses, and dates from the early 2000s right up to the days before he disappeared. Among the notes were lines like "must confirm before sending," "afraid Marcia will be in danger if this breaks," and "just a few days left." The writing grew increasingly rushed and shaky as it neared the date of his disappearance, reading them through tears. Marcia realized Derek had been secretly pursuing an investigation he believed could endanger not just careers, but his own life and hers. Police cross-checked records and discovered that, in the 2 weeks leading up to Derek's disappearance, an unmarked black SUV was seen at least 3 times near their home. During the same hours Derek typically returned from errands, phone data showed that on the morning he vanished, an unknown mobile device connected to a cell tower near Derek's parking spot belonging neither to him nor to anyone in his family. This detail shifted the case from a family tragedy to a potential crime of grave seriousness. As police expanded their investigation, an unexpected visitor arrived at the station to share information. A man who owned a small souvenir shop on the road leading into the Badlands, about 3 kilometers from where Derek's car was found. He recounted that, on the morning Derek went missing, while opening his shop, he saw 2 black SUVs parked close together by the roadside. He watched as an older man in a dark jacket and green cap was escorted from one of the vehicles by 2 men, stumbling like he was being restrained. When the shopkeeper looked more closely, one of the men turned toward him, fixing him with a cold, menacing stare that sent a chill down his spine. Terrified, he lowered his head and pretended to arrange his shelves. When he looked up again, Both vehicles were gone. At the time, he thought it might have been a domestic dispute and didn't report it. But for 5 years, the image of the man in the green cap haunted his dreams until he heard news of Derek's hat being found. Then he knew he had likely witnessed Derek's final moments in public. His description matched Derek's height and build perfectly. It was the first real breakthrough since Derek disappeared. News of the witness's statement spread quickly through local media, sparking a wave of outrage in the community. Hundreds gathered outside the city police headquarters, demanding justice for Derek and calling on authorities to identify the 2 men seen with him that day. For the first time, Marcia stepped in front of the cameras, clutching a wedding photo of herself and Derek. Speaking with a trembling but determined voice, she declared, "My husband didn't just walk away. He was taken, silenced because he discovered something he wasn't supposed to. He deserves to be found. I will not stop searching until my last breath." Marcia's words ignited a firestorm of anger, ratcheting up pressure on local police and officials. No one believed the narrative of an accident or lost hiker anymore. The hat found in an inaccessible crevice, the witness testimony, the unfamiliar fingerprints in Derek's car, the hurried, fearful notes. Together they painted a chilling picture. Derek may have been eliminated to keep him from exposing the truth. Tensions reached a boiling point as the community called for the FBI to take over the case, transforming the disappearance of a retired police officer into a major scandal, threatening public faith in law enforcement itself. In the days after news of the hat and the witness testimony spread, the atmosphere in Rapid City felt taut with fear and suspicion. Family, friends, and neighbors of Derek began sharing small, unsettling stories. They'd each experienced a black SUV idling outside their homes, strange noises in the dead of night, silent phone calls to landlines that went unanswered, or strangers standing across the street as if watching Derek's house. These fragments of gossip, once whispered behind closed doors, now wove together into a chilling pattern that sent shivers through the community, yet when approached officially, most people fell silent, afraid of being caught up in something bigger than themselves. The fear seeped into every alley, every living room. Everyone felt the presence of some invisible power lurking behind Derek's disappearance. At community meetings, many openly admitted they no longer believed this was just an accident, but a growing sense of helplessness took hold as local police became evasive, refusing press questions, citing an ongoing investigation but offering no updates. Major media outlets started going quiet too. Some reporters privately revealed they'd been warned off, digging deeper into the case. Marcia understood the fear, but it only made her more determined. She had already lost almost everything: her husband, her faith in justice. But she would not surrender the truth. While sorting through an old cabinet, Marcia found a small, worn leather notebook tucked among Derek's documents. The last pages were filled with Derek's hurried, increasingly chaotic handwriting. He wrote, "I found an unusual money transfer, not just one, but a string of transactions going back years. The person involved holds high office, beyond the police department." On another page, he had underlined, "Will meet R to hand over copies. If I don't come back, it means I went too far." Marcia's hands shook and tears streamed down her face as she read. She knew R meant Raymond, Derek's closest friend, but after their final call, Raymond had disappeared. When police tried to find him, they learned he'd sold his house and moved away the month after Derek vanished, leaving no forwarding address or phone number. A crushing wave of despair washed over Marcia. The only person who might have Derek's evidence was gone in that moment. Every scrap of faith she had in the people Derek trusted seemed to crumble. When the FBI officially stepped in under, mounting pressure from the family and community, they pored over Derek's financial files, many details aligned with the corruption allegations from 20 years earlier, revealing suspicious payments involving a company supplying equipment to the city's police force, inflated invoices, and fake expenses. But the key figures in this possible scheme had since retired, left the state, or passed away. Derek's meticulous notes were damning enough to spark suspicion, but not solid enough to press charges. And with no body, no footage, only scattered clues, the FBI issued a preliminary conclusion. There is a high probability that Mr. Derek Johnson experienced an incident caused by a third party. However, current evidence is insufficient to pursue a criminal case. For the family, it was a gut punch. No one was arrested. No one held accountable. The community's fear only deepened. As everyone realized, this wasn't just about a missing man anymore. It was a harsh reminder that when the truth threatens powerful people, it can be buried even when it's right in front of our eyes. On the final day of the public hearing, Marcia stepped to the podium. Her voice was raw from so many nights of tears, but her eyes burned with resolve. She described every last morning spent with Derek, how he woke early, carefully grooming himself in preparation for the new life they had dreamed of sharing together. She said, "If someone thinks leaving that hat in a Badlands crevice would silence my questions, they were wrong. I will see this through, for the truth, and for the love I have for that man." The hall fell silent except for quiet sobs. The sunset cast an orange glow through the windows, bathing Derek's portrait on the wall in a golden light that felt like a final farewell. But Marcia knew this was not the end. She was already preparing a petition to escalate the case to higher federal authorities, reaching out to anti-corruption organizations for help uncovering more leads. In her heart, Derek was never truly gone. He was waiting for someone to unearth the truth. And in her determined eyes, this disappearance was not a closed tragedy, but a rallying cry. Does justice truly exist? Or will it forever abandon those honest enough to walk toward the light on a crisp autumn night? Marcia sat at Derek's old desk, the soft yellow glow of the desk lamp illuminating papers spread across the worn wooden surface. She had grown used to these nights over the past 5 years, poring over every detail, reading and rereading her husband's notes, searching for a glimmer of hope in the faded words every time she closed her eyes. She still saw Derek's gentle smile as he stepped through the door, the smell of fresh coffee mingling with the scent of his old jacket, the quiet thud of his boots on the wooden floor. The pain of loss had slowly given way to an unbreakable resolve, a determination to uncover the truth. She began recording her thoughts aloud. As if speaking directly to Derek, "I still believe in you, and I won't let you be forgotten." Then she made a video call to their 2 children, urging them to keep living happily, not to let fear or hatred tear the family apart amid all the injustice. Marcia knew only love, patience, and faith could keep her from breaking every morning. She still opened the window to let sunlight pour into the living room, to remind herself the world could still be beautiful, to believe that justice might be delayed but would one day arrive. Each time she looked toward the distant, hazy Badlands, she whispered, "Derek, I promise I won't give up." Derek's story isn't just a personal tragedy. It is a warning to anyone who believes that justice automatically finds those who live with integrity in life. Sometimes it is the very best among us who suffer the deepest wounds because they cannot look away from wrongdoing. But justice isn't the burden of one person alone. It is the responsibility of an entire community. Every person who cares, every voice that speaks out, every story shared, every question asked each is a piece of the puzzle that can bring the truth to light. We cannot let silence swallow those who lived with honor, like Derek. So, if this story touches your heart, please share it. Let Derek Johnson's name never fade into oblivion. Write a comment, "I believe in the truth," for Derek, if you believe he deserves to be found and vindicated. Tell others about the man who spent his life protecting his community, only to be consumed by the darkness he tried so hard to push back. And if you've ever wondered whether integrity is worth it, remember this. It is the unwavering strength of people like Derek that keeps our world from falling into chaos. Derek Johnson may have vanished into the Badlands, but his story lives on. A reminder that justice only exists if we keep demanding it.